He was the wisest man who ever lived, with riches beyond imagination and the favor of God himself. King Solomon truly had it all. So how did his story end not in glory, but as a cautionary tale of tragic failure? We're about to explore the 3 fatal mistakes that led to the downfall of the world's wisest king, and the lessons are more relevant today than you could ever imagine. This isn't just a story about a king from 3,000 years ago. It's a story about the subtle compromises that can corrupt any of us. It's a warning that wisdom, on its own, is never enough. To feel the weight of Solomon's fall, you first have to understand the staggering height from which he fell. His reign didn't start with arrogance. It started with a moment of profound humility. As a young man, just made king of Israel, Solomon was visited by God in a dream. God said to him, "Ask for whatever you want me to give you." Now just imagine that offer. A blank check from the creator of the universe. Most of us would ask for wealth, power, or a long life. But Solomon asked for something else entirely. He asked for a discerning heart to govern your people and to distinguish between right and wrong. This selfless request pleased God so much that he not only gave Solomon unmatched wisdom, but also threw in the riches and honor he never even asked for. And this wisdom wasn't just some abstract idea. It was shockingly practical. The most famous example is his judgment between the 2 women who both claimed the same baby. When Solomon called for a sword to split the child in 2, he wasn't being cruel. He was setting a trap for the truth. He knew the real mother's love would force her to give up her son rather than see him harmed. In that moment of crisis, the truth was exposed and justice was served. Stories like this built his legend. Rulers and philosophers traveled from all over the known world just to listen to him speak. With this wisdom, he built an empire of peace and prosperity. Alliances were secured, trade routes thrived, and the kingdom of Israel reached its absolute peak. His crowning achievement was building the magnificent temple in Jerusalem, a 7-year project that created a permanent home for the Ark of the Covenant. In these golden years, Solomon was the perfect model of a righteous and blessed king. He had a brilliant mind, a peaceful kingdom, and a deep connection with God. He had everything, and that's what makes what happened next so devastating. A kingdom doesn't collapse overnight. It happens slowly, crack by crack. Solomon's downfall wasn't one single event, but a series of quiet compromises that eroded the very foundation of his faith. It all started with 3 specific and ultimately fatal mistakes. The first crack in his perfect kingdom didn't appear on a battlefield or in the treasury. It appeared in his personal life. For any king of Israel, God's law was crystal clear. Do not marry women from the surrounding pagan nations. This wasn't about race. It was about spiritual survival. The law explicitly warned, "They will surely turn your heart away after their gods." But Solomon, in all his wisdom, thought he was the exception to the rule. Maybe he saw these marriages as smart politics, a way to forge alliances with powerful neighbors. But what started as a political strategy quickly spiraled into an obsession. The Bible says he had 700 wives and 300 concubines, an empire of affection no single heart could manage. And just as the law predicted, it all came true. To please his foreign wives, Solomon started tolerating their religions. He let them bring their idols and priests into the heart of his kingdom. As he got older, the Bible gives us this haunting summary. His wives turned his heart after other gods, and his heart was not fully devoted to the Lord his God. What began as a political compromise ended as a spiritual betrayal. His heart, once loyal to the God who gave him everything, was now divided. The second mistake was a direct violation of 2 other rules for an Israelite king. The law not only warned against many wives, but also against stockpiling horses, especially from Egypt, and accumulating massive amounts of gold and silver. These rules were designed to keep the king dependent on God, not on his own military might or wealth. Solomon didn't just break these rules, he shattered them. He built a massive army with thousands of chariots and horses, many imported directly from Egypt, the one nation God told his people never to return to. His wealth became so legendary that in Jerusalem, silver was said to be as common as stones. On the surface, who could argue with this? A strong army, a booming economy. Isn't that what every leader wants? But spiritually, this represented a dangerous shift from faith to self-reliance. Instead of trusting God as his shield, Solomon trusted his chariots. Instead of seeing God as his provider, he found security in mountains of gold. He was no longer the humble king asking for wisdom, but an emperor hoarding the tools of worldly power. The final mistake was the inevitable conclusion of the first two. What started with simply tolerating his wives' religions ended with him actively participating in them. The same king who built the glorious temple for the one true God now began building shrines to false gods on the hills around his own capital. The details are shocking. Solomon built a shrine for Chemosh, the detestable god of Moab, and for Molech, the horrific god of the Ammonites, whose rituals sometimes involved child sacrifice. He built altars for the goddess Ashtoreth. These weren't private chapels. These were public projects, royal endorsements of idol worship in the holy city. This was the point of no return. His heart hadn't just turned from God, it was now actively working against him. The wisest man in the world was committing the most foolish act imaginable, trading the Creator for cheap imitations. His desire to please his wives had completely overtaken his duty to honor his God. The compromises had run their course, and he was left spiritually bankrupt. The patterns in Solomon's life are more than just ancient history. They're timeless warnings. If this story has given you a new perspective on how small compromises can lead to big failures, please take a second to hit the like button and subscribe for more deep dives into these powerful accounts. Sharing this video might even help someone else recognize these patterns in their own life. The consequences of Solomon's choices were swift and severe. God declared that because Solomon had broken their covenant, the kingdom would be torn from him. As a final grace for his father David's sake, it wouldn't happen in his lifetime, but the cracks were already showing. Enemies who had been quiet for decades suddenly rose up. A prophecy was given that his son would rule only a fraction of the once mighty empire. The reign that began in absolute peace ended under the dark shadow of rebellion and civil war. Solomon's story is the ultimate cautionary tale. It teaches us that wisdom is no guarantee against foolishness. Success and knowledge are no substitute for character and obedience. His fall reminds us that destruction rarely happens in a single blowout. It's a slow leak. It's the small compromise made for a good reason. It's the growing trust in our own strength instead of a higher power. It's the slow division of our heart's loyalties until there's nothing left to give. His life forces us to ask, where are we compromising? Where are we trusting our own strength? Where are our hearts secretly divided? Because if the wisest man who ever lived could fall, then any of us can. His tragic legacy isn't just a judgment on a long-dead king, but a timeless lesson for all of us. That true wisdom isn't just knowing what's right, it's having the humility and the character to do it, day after day until the very end.